scratch, wampum, dough, sugar, clams, loot, bills, bones, bread, bucks, money. Money is, at its essence, that measure.
Welcome to the Ozark podcast, presented by the Joe Blow Football Show. I'm Jamie G. Esquire, the 5th MD, Master of Surgical Arts. He is Magnum Mills. And together, we're going to break down the 4th episode of Season 4 of Ozark, Ace Deuce. Ace Deuce was released January 21st, 2022. This one was directed by Alec Sakharov. This is his 7th episode of Ozark that he has directed. Alec, if I butchered your last name, I do apologize. This one was written by John Shaban, guest starring Eric Layden as Carrie Stone, Katrina Lenk as Claire Shaw, Richard Thomas as Nathan Davis, Kevin L. Johnson as Sam Dermody, and Cece Castillo as Sheriff Guerrero. The plot summary in this one is Wendy's claims about Ben anger Ruth. Mel, the PI, tracks down Wendy's father. Ruth's trip to Missouri Belle with Carrie doesn't go as planned. Magnum Mills, walk us through some of the notable callbacks and appearances in episode 4.
Right up first here, we have the title card symbols for this episode are family photos, a gravestone and shovel, heroin, and a goat. It's always fun to kind of interpret what you think those might mean. We're going to break those down at some point in the future. We see that Sam has gone from a fake gambling problem to a real gambling problem. His stripper wife also left him. That's why you never fall in love with a stripper. And she even sold his mom, who had been condensed down into ring form. And we see Carrie Stone again. He survives a heroin overdose, but my guess is we probably won't be seeing him again. And we meet Wendy's father for the first time, who does indeed seem to be heavily involved with the church, just like Wendy had stated to the preacher in previous seasons. And the end credit song here is kind of notable, and it is A Lot by 21 Savage.
Again, just a continued great job with the soundtrack on Ozark, really dating back from season 1. Got to give these folks a ton of credit there. Magnum Mills, I think what we should do here is we should talk about our likes and then our dislikes. But let's start off with the things that really worked for us, man. I mean, I don't know. This episode to me was really good. It kind of picked right back up where I wanted it to, and it's just this fast moving train right now. Can we start with Wendy? She's taking control, or is she completely out of control? I mean, some of the things she's doing is just really crossing the line here. We'll talk about that a little bit with our dislikes, but pointing the sheriff to Ruth, Darlene, Jonah, saying Ben had addiction issues. I mean, she is like really out on a ledge here, and Wendy is, for better or worse, this is her. Like, we've been building up Wendy for all 3 seasons leading up to this one, and she's taken full control. And I would argue, as this season progresses, she's kind of becoming the lead of the show a little bit. And it's an interesting development with her and evolution over the first 4 seasons. But man, she is, for better or worse, she's in control, at least in her mind.
On the Wendy front there, although before I go forward, I should say that we're going to spoil everything for Ozark up through this 4th episode of season 4. We have seen all of the 7 episodes that have been released in season 4, but we will not be spoiling anything past this episode 4, Ace Deuce, but we will be spoiling everything that happens in this episode. And I have to say that my favorite Wendy moment, hands on here, is when she rips the fucking phone off the wall. You kind of see that pure rage, and she always tries so hard to keep her emotions bottled up. And I think they're also trying to imply that her relationship with her father is definitely going to be a thing that they're going to circle back around to here, and probably maybe try to show that part of the way she is comes from her father on some level or something like that, or at least that's what I'm assuming here.
Another thing that I liked about this episode is Sam. Sam is back, right? I mean, we took his fake gambling problem. It's real again. Some of my favorite moments are involving Sam throughout the course of the show, just to add some humor to it. But, I absolutely love Sam managing the Lazy O.
That is literally a perfect character arc for him, I think. Of course, he's kind of right back to where he was at that real estate office again. He's just so lovably clueless. It's just really fantastic. And the whole idea that, of course, him winding up with a stripper was going to end badly, and they even pay off the thing with his mom being pressed into a diamond. And yeah, I liked everything about the Sam plot line here.
Yep. Very cool. It's a welcome addition back, and excited to see them continue using him in that role. Magnum Mills, Javi. Like, I literally have in my notes, Javi is a mofo problem, right? Like, I really like this this tension that's building with Marty and Javi here. And walk us through your opinion of this road trip they take together. I mean, I really enjoyed this scene for me.
Yeah, because you have Marty and Javi kind of in the truck or whatever, and I believe they're hauling stuff or whatever, and Javi's he's sipping out of his flask, having a good old time, and Marty's basically like parenting him, just like he is Jonah. He's even like asked for a swig of the flask and then just like takes it away and puts it in the door. You wouldn't want to be in the back seat. You would not want to be having to sit with those two on a road trip, but it kind of makes it again fun. And this is a show that I wouldn't, it's not as dark as it used to be, but it's not a lot of fun happening. So when you get these fun moments, I'm really willing to take him. And Bateman is especially good at playing that kind of subtle comedy. So this is really right down his alley when he gets to play up those smaller comedic moments.
Yeah, glad to see they're starting to use that a little bit and mix that in. I mean, he's super.
There's a little bit of Michael Bluth, the way he puts that flask away, kind of, in like it's like something he would have done to Job or something like that,
or his mom.
There's just a pinch of Michael Bluth in there, and it works wonderfully. I think
100%, and he excels in that. I'm glad for, and really you can look at that as a maturity of the production and the writing team, associated with the show. I mean, they're starting to use his skill set a little bit. It's never going to be the main thing with him because he's playing Marty Byrde, but it's nice to see that mixed in there a little bit.
Well, just while we're on Marty real quick, I will say for me, he had my favorite line of the episode, which is kind of when he's just kind of frustrated with the family. He says, look, I'm late for my own felony. I'll see you later. And just kind of pieces. Like just Marty, like he's just kind of accepted his lot in life kind of at this point. Like literally, like he's like, yeah, well, y'all got your own felonies to take care of. I'm going to go head off to mine. So I'll see it. Like, it's just so casual. And, I think that's the juxtaposition they're going for a little bit. Just like as you would say, have a nice day at work. He's like, oh, I got to go away for my felony.
It's perfect. It's well, very fitting. Speaking of Marty, while we're on it, I mean, let's just go right to it, right? Like, how excited were you? And did you get that old feeling back a little bit down there when Marty and Ruth are now going to work together again? When Marty goes to her, part of me is starting to see that, look, there is no love lost between Ruth and Wendy. But part of me believes that Ruth still got a soft place in her heart for Marty because, dude, honestly, Marty, I think he's as real straight up with Ruth as he possibly could be with anyone. He was pretty good to her, man. And I think she still got a little love for him. And I don't know, I was excited. I'm like, please give me more Marty and Ruth. Like, I love that combo.
This is a show where, despite the fact that the characters are pretty good about sharing information with each other, they're not necessarily sharing much emotionally. And I think at the end, you finally, Ruth and Marty are always playing these various games, whether to stay alive or just to stay ahead or whatever. And you finally, I think, get a real moment between them with very quietly at the end, they crack the beers and they're just sitting there. And Ruth goes like, why did Wendy say that shit about Ben? And Marty just kind of quietly says like, I wish I knew. And they just kind of slowly pan back from that and fade. And they do have a connection on some deeper emotional level. Yes. I don't know if necessarily maybe it's the paternal relationship they were hinting at in the earlier seasons where he was more of a father figure. Here they're becoming closer to equals or whatever. And it does seem that, Marty really does sympathize with her pretty deeply. It's just that they always have shit timing, kind of like, Ruth always catches Marty at like the worst time possible, even though we know as a viewer, he's trying to do right by her. He has brushed her off a few times because, we know he's got this other shit going on, but she does kind of not on the pay no mind list, but she doesn't always quite get there. But you see here in a scene like this, these two characters might have maybe the most honest relationship of anybody in the show right now, kind of.
Yeah.
They know where they stand with each other, at least.
Absolutely. And it was nice to see, and I hope we get more of that as season 4 rolls on. Mills, a couple more things here for me in the likes column. Let's just talk Darlene for a minute, right? I mean, anytime Darlene's got a shotgun in her hand, somebody about to die, dude. And not just even like, she doesn't blow your head off. Like, she goes right for the gut, dude. Like, she's going to shoot you straight up in the chest with a double barrel shotgun. Like, and she feels the kickback just a little. She is the most dangerous woman in the world with shotgun in her hand. Like, I mean, that murder will happen, right? I mean, now this one was kind of obvious, but with the driver, right?
As soon as that, like, it literally on my notes, as soon as that limo driver opened his mouth, I started writing down, Darlene's going to shoot his ass. By the time I got to the second S and S, Darlene had shot his ass.
Oh yeah. Here's what I loved about this scene, though, more so than just Darlene's wild card. I mean, Darlene is nuts, right? But I loved, I mean, this was Wyatt's first murder, right? And what this did is it started to, for this entire season, they have been building a peak here, right? Between, is it going to be Wyatt and Ruth, or is it going to be Wyatt in Darlene, because even though they tried to give us all three to start season 4, I think we all knew the three of them were not going to last, right? And so this has been building. And what we saw here is Darlene's been kind of winning the battle for Wyatt a little bit. And with this murder and the way Wyatt's forced to deal with this, as Wyatt and Ruth have to clean up and dig the hole for the body, this starts, I think, to kind of sway the pendulum a little bit back towards Ruthie, where maybe, just maybe, Wyatt would consider leaving Darlene and Ruth would win here. But I love this scene. I thought this was critical for a storyline that I personally enjoy here, because something's going to come to a head with the Darlene, Wyatt, and Ruth, arrangement.
I think the scene of Wyatt and Ruth burying the body is right up there with the Ruth and Marty scene. Note the common denominator between the two scenes, and you know who we like around here. But after that, you see the next morning Ruth comes out, and then Wyatt wakes up and he's sleeping on the fucking roof of the trailer. It just made me kind of crack up, because you forget sometimes he really is a kid. And I think that's kind of fucked up to, that's one thing I've never really figured out, kind of if Darlene actually like really loves him, or if she's just kind of been using him. Like, I think she kind of loves him, but not like in a kind of weird, twisted, like he's her lover, but her son kind of, I don't know. I think there's someone with a better knowledge of psychiatry could speak better to it than I, but that just seems kind of like there's a whole lot of complexes going on there or something, probably for both party involved. That's always been kind of an uncomfortable relationship for me, but I think here it works very well dramatically to set up the stakes of who is, because Wyatt could sway things. Which side he goes on could really kind of, move the balance one way or the other, whether he goes to Darlene or goes to Ruth. So I think that's, really important here. And maybe the show is finally starting to find its way with Wyatt, a character they've really struggled with.
Could not agree more. And you're right. It is a creepy relationship. And, even at times they've tried to make light of it, the show has, but it's still very odd to see them kiss and make out. Or, man, early on when they first started getting together, we'd have to like watch them bang and stuff. It was like, that was very weird. Like, I don't really I'm not enjoying this. Like, it was better with like freaking her husband. Like, I don't know, like neither was good. But
I'm not an ageist, but this isn't my kink or whatever. So if this is your kink, good for you, but not.
Yeah,
really
we're not kink shaming.
Yeah,
no kink shaming
really,
whatsoever.
Again, like we could have pictured it in our head or something. I don't know. It's fine.
Yeah. But it's
shout out to the actress for being older and willing to get herself out there and stuff too. So not no shaming anybody. Good for you. Just wasn't very erotic.
didn't wet our whistle, but that's okay. Speaking of wetting our whistles, Mills, you and I had kind of a disagreement a little bit, and I love your point on this, and that was around the casino ODing with Carrie Stone. For me, this was a dislike, but tell me why this was a like for you, because I really think that you're starting to sell me on this a little bit.
Yeah, well, let me start with the one part that I didn't quite talk about before, because I was waiting on the Carrie Stone thing, and that's his interaction with Sam at the motel after he ODs, when he's checking out, and Sam asks him like, "So did you enjoy your stay?" Like all nice and earnestly, and he kind of looks at him like, "I guess." And then Sam pesters him for food advice about paella or whatever, some fucking shit he's cooking, on the hopes that his stripper wife will someday come back to him and let him cooking for her. But obviously the dude just kind of putting up with him, and then he names like 800 ingredients. He's like, "Oh yeah, I put them all in there," and he's like, "You're fucking choking it, man." And that's probably the last line we're going to get from him, but I just thought that was just a fantastic scene. And again, this goes to kind of why I like the scene with him in the casino. I'm not really a fan of the whole heroin plot line. The OD thing, once he went in the bathroom twice, I said, okay, this is where this is going, pretty obviously. But you know what, for once he just picked Ruth up, and there wasn't really, he had no ulterior motive. It was like, let's go gamble and have fun. Nobody does that on this show, man. Like, there is very little like cutting loose. No one's ever really dancing or smiling or doing anything. So for like 5, it was really like 2 minutes, but they were in the casino, they were winning at dice, everyone's having drinks, having a good time. It was just a little bit of levity in the show that really the only levity we get for the most part is just conveyed either with Sam in his earnestness or through maybe some of the music or whatever.
You know what, man, you're absolutely right. It was kind of a sight for sore eyes a little bit with, you're right, they were just having some good old fun. It sucks that it had to involve
you forget Ruth isn't even 30 yet. She never gets to like do anything, and this was like her, she had to go through all this shit just to go have a good time. She had to like get on the phone with Marty just to get permission to, like, literally she had no ulterior motive.
Yep. No, absolutely. It was nice to see her just go have fun. Obviously for me, I didn't like that scene because the storyline's so hard to believe. And there's just so many holes that it's just one of those things that it's just every time it comes up, I'm kind of like, this one's, I really got to like grasp here to allow myself to believe this. And, you know, the other thing, Mills, and I have a feeling this might be a runner for us here, unfortunately, is Ben, Wendy's brother. I'm going to say it. I hate, yes, the 4-letter word. I hate that this continues to be such a driving force of one of basically the show's, I don't know, you could make a case, maybe its most important storyline. Like it just sucks for me that it's a one season character that like I never really was able to get attached. Like it's tough that he is this important in this show after they killed him off. I hate it.
I can't say that I blame you. He was basically a human wedge. He was designed by the writers to drive a wedge between every single character in the show, between Ruth and the birds, between Marty and Wendy, between Jonah and his parents, between the cartel and the birds. I mean, he was very obvious why they needed him from a plot standpoint, but I was kind of hoping that was the end of it. I really don't like the idea here now that not only the creating of the fake drug addiction and, you know, there might be some other stuff going forward. It does seem that we're going to have to keep dealing with this character. Now they're going to use an excuse to bring Wendy's dad into play, and maybe that could be all right. But again, this might again be servicing a storyline that I really didn't like to begin with. So yeah, I'm not a fan of this at all. And this seems honestly like this is almost more of a crossing a line by Wendy for me than it was, say, like letting Helen kill Kate or something like that. Like this is like she is actively, knowingly using the memory of her dead brother who she could have helped save to further her ambitions. It's pretty fucking grimy.
Lying about Ben having an addiction problem and just disregarding the fact that not only do they know he's dead, they're ultimately responsible for it, and just speaking his name, lying about, like, it's just not a good look. And she is just absolutely hungry for what she wants, and she's going to stop at nothing to get it. It's a dangerous Wendy. And like I said, for better or worse, this is the Wendy who we have. And part of me loves it, but then she does shit like this. And I'm like, Wendy, that's just so cold, even for you. And, you know, I have a feeling that's going to happen probably maybe every episode. She does one thing where you're like, wow, like she's kind of becoming Walt, right, of Breaking Bad, where it's like you root for him, you like him, but God, you're a horrible human being, dude. Like the shit Walt does to Jesse, right? Anyways, that's a separate podcast when we do Breaking Bad one day, but you get my point. Mills, let's move on to Mel, right? Mel Saddam has been, I love watching him jam out in his car to cool songs and stuff. Like that's awesome when he comes in and he's chewing his gum, and he's a real cool dude. But what the living hell are they doing with this character? Like, are we finally getting something with him now, you know, tracking off of Helen and starting to sniff around with Ben and going out and visiting Wendy's father? Like, are we going to find out who this guy is? Or are they just going to let this kind of fumble all the way to the finish line here?
I was kind of trying to come up with an analog for this character. You know, it did kind of bring me to Breaking Bad, and you think about kind of the final antagonist or someone they bring into the game a bit later in the show. So what I'm kind of thinking here is maybe he is going to be a bigger part in the back half of either this part 1 or in part 2, and they don't want to just throw him in there. So what they're doing is giving him all these cool character traits and kind of being like, oh, look at this cool guy, like a little Boba Fett kind of. Like, oh, look at that dude with like the cool armor and like he looks badass and stuff. And they're trying to set him up as like he seems cool or whatever. So when he finally becomes a bigger part of the story, we're willing to buy it. That's fine. They're just not being very fucking subtle about it from a writing standpoint.
Yep.
They've done everything but release his action figure ahead of the season, you know?
Yep. No, you're
Funko Pop or whatever.
Yeah, Glocko Pop. And you're absolutely right. And we'll see what happens with him. Oddly enough, though, I want to know. He's one of the mysteries of the show for me. Like, I want to know what his deal is. I'm going to talk about Charlotte a little bit. And I think we got a couple of things with Charlotte. I on one hand, I like that Wendy was kind of the driving force, talking her out, you know, out of taking the SATs and going to college and working for the family business. I think that makes her proud. And she's able to kind of make Charlotte her little pet project of turning her into herself, which is so Wendy and so bad for Charlotte, but that's what's going to happen. But on the other hand, I thought that the storyline was just basically overkill because they needed something to do with Charlotte. I would rather see Charlotte do other shit, you know, take on jobs for the parents, get involved. I'd rather they just show her doing those things than like staging this whole thing where she walks out of the SATs. It just, to me, it just seemed like a lot of fluff, just basically we need to do something with her. And this is all we can think of at the 25th hour. It just felt that way to me.
I think if the writers had a do-over at the beginning of the series, they would have aged Jonah and Charlotte up by like 3 years each. It would have been way more interesting if she was already like basically 18 or almost, and there was going to be a bigger deal about whether she left or stayed. Jonah would have more ages. Now I'm trying to remember, is Jonah really like 14 years old or something still? Because again, the actors definitely have aged out enough past it that it is noticeable now. And I think that's one of the reasons why the show doesn't like to point out exactly how much time has passed. So trying to kind of fudge it, because I think it's way less time than it would be based on how these characters look now. Same thing when they do the flashbacks. I don't really like, they don't really do much differentiate. It's just one of those things. I don't know if just that's the show's approach to it or whatever, but yeah. And I would say the creepiest thing here is the whole Javi Charlotte thing. We saw that, I believe, at the end of the last episode when he was pouring more champagne or whatever into Charlotte's drink. Here, when they're having the little road trip, he makes a comment to Marty about her. And to his credit, I don't know if he really is trying to, get with a 17-year-old or if he's just doing it to fuck with Marty. Could be a little bit of column A, a little bit of column B. It's just kind of creepy. And I think there's enough creepy going around in the show that they don't really need to kind of, it'd be like Game of Thrones adding like a second incest plotline. Oh, wait, they did that.
Yeah, they did. But they did wait till the last season. But I guess Ozark's doing the same thing.
It's your jam, man.
The other thing here,
yeah,
absolutely. The other thing here, Mills, and we talked about this a little bit for the first 3 episodes, is we're just kind of like, we went from like Marty like desperately hiding this from the feds and not claiming to know Navarro or do this, just be a business owner. We went to him having, Agent Miller up his ass in the casino where he denies everything, to now all of a sudden he's just basically like, yeah, I know Navarro and I'll get you a meeting, and then it just feels like nobody's cautious here for being the second largest cartel in the world. It just feels like a little bit loose here in terms of like, talking on the phones. I don't know, Mills. Am I crazy on this?
No, you're not crazy at all. This is kind of nuts, really. What they needed to do at some point was at least have a sit down with one of the birds and an FBI agent and explain like, all right, here is what's going to happen going forward. It doesn't make any sense. We have no idea do they have a separate deal? Are they part of the deal? Again, I think they're doing it from a writing standpoint to keep their options open by being vague on how this is all going to work. I'm just not a fan of that. And dude, they're talking, the birds, they say everything on the phone. They don't have burners. They have like regular phone. They're using the same phone for the foundation as they're calling Navarro on. They say whatever the fuck they want over the lines. And then Navarro is openly talking about like snitching and shit in front of like his driver, random underling. Like it just, you're right. It really is. It just seems sloppy writing almost. It wouldn't be that hard to just make sure that they're talking on burner phones if they're going to say shit, or Navarro like goes into the other room and shuts the door or some shit.
And I think for you and I, especially, this is probably a bigger deal for us just because we love the mafia and mafia movies and mafia storylines. And we've seen, shows like Sopranos and like mafia movies where, this is like code, dude. And they do a great job capturing how protective they are about talking on the phones and, just all day long. We got a guy just running to the payphones. I mean,
they drive for 30 minutes and they still like, when they're on the payphone, they just, you got in the place with the thing, with the other guy, with the small guy, they still don't say.
Right. They still don't ever, like, you'll never get caught on that. I personally am just a big fan of that. And so I think maybe you and I are probably having a harder time with this and maybe picking up on it, maybe more than most, maybe not. Let us know at ozarkpodcast@gmail.com. But those things did not work for me, Magnum Mills. Now, this was not a perfect episode by any stretch of the imagination, but it was a pretty good one. And I think set the stage kind of for the last 3 here as we finish this first block of 7. You know the rules, man. We got to grade this thing, right? Like, how's this thing shake out for you in terms of how much money and what percentage of it is dirty?
Yeah, I mean, the thing is there, you want to have that 100% clean money. You just pull it out of the ATM, you walk down the street, then you have that dirty money where as soon as you spend a dime, you're dead. And again, I think this has fallen right in that solid kind of, it's at least, it's probably like, I'd say maybe like a soft C plus, not quite into that B minus range, but better than a straight C. So probably that, like, if you're going to go, that 1 to 100, probably like 76.5, 77% clean. You could probably get away with it, but you want to be a little bit careful with it.
You might be able to take that to the pawn shop, but you're not going to be able to take that to the bank. I'm going to go with just slightly higher. I'm giving this a 79. I'm giving this a hard C+. It's firm. It's gone hard. And it's a 79 for me. I enjoyed it. It moved along. But again, we've got a lot of building here. And you just know some of these balloons are going to burst. And that's why we keep coming back for more. Magnum Mills. Episode 4 was fun. I don't know about you, but here on the Ozark podcast, I can't wait to talk about episode 5. Folks, we got good news for you. We're probably going to do it. Magnum Mills, where can they tune in to hear us break down episode 5 on the Ozark podcast?
In an ideal world, you're just going to sit right here. As soon as I'm done talking, the next episode will start playing. If this is your first time listening, easiest thing to do is just click that follow, that subscribe button. You can find us on all of your favorite podcast streaming platforms simply by searching for the Ozark Podcast or just Ozark Podcast. We're on social media, Twitter, Instagram, all the good ones at Ozark Podcast. You can send feedback to ozarkpodcast@gmail.com. We're from the Joe Blow Football Show. You can find all our stuff there at joeblowfootballshow.com. And the Joe Blow Football Show is on social media again, all the good ones at Joe Blow Show. Thank you very much for listening and or watching. Stick with us for this next episode of Ozark.
This has been the Ozark Podcast, presented by the Joe Blow Football Show. We are not in any way, shape, or form affiliated with Ozark, MRC, Aggregate Films, or Netflix. This show is for entertainment purposes only. Any views or opinions expressed here are personal and do not represent those of people, institutions, or organizations who may or may not be associated with the Joe Blow Football Show. If you have any questions, please contact us at ozarkpodcast@gmail.com. That's ozarkpodcast@gmail.com. Thank you for listening. Please remember to like, subscribe, and comment.
I'm so fucking focused. Yeah.